Don't you just feel like spreading out this morning? Oh, sorry, you can't. That's a good problem to have. I apologize for maybe the crampedness, but I will do my best to move through this in an expeditious manner. Today, some good news on the new facility front, by the way. We did hear from an architect who is going to work with us on our phasing for half of what he would normally charge. And he has been very, very easy to work with. And so that's the first good news in over 3 years on that. And then keep this in mind in the meantime as we continue to work on that, as our church just continues to grow. I'm working through in my own mind 3 Sunday services if we need to, because it's not okay when you get that cramped. There's something about that so we might have to do that for a little while. If we do, we'll just make it work. It'll be an easy transition, or as easy as possible. But this is a good kind of problem to have. Rather than stacking chairs, we have to unstack them. So anyway, just keep those things in mind, and that's a reason to celebrate God. It's a reason for you to just say thanks, God, for what you're doing. People are hungry for God, and because they're hungry, God doesn't let people starve when they're hungry for Him. He'll feed you. He'll feed you. Well, happy Mother's Day, as I've already said, to all of you moms, grandmas, great-grandmas, great-great-grandmas, great-great-great-grandmas, great-great, no, I don't think there's any of those. If there are, wow, that's impressive. But all of you aspiring moms, ladies that want to be moms and are not yet, just happy Mother's Day to you. We appreciate you, and we don't value you enough. Here's the truth about mothers, and really parenting in general, but today we're speaking very specifically to moms. But the truth is that motherhood is often misunderstood. It is definitely undervalued. It is incredibly underappreciated. Our culture does not do a good job with elevating the role of a mother. If all you are is a mom, you're kind of second class. My wife and daughter over in Minnesota were at a funeral yesterday. And my daughter, I talked to her last night. She sat down at the reception. A guy came up to her, asked her what she wanted to do after graduation. She told him, because my daughter's greatest aspiration is to be a mom. And he said, well, that's all fine and good, but you need to do something else with your life. You need to figure out something to fall back on. Money's nice. In fact, money will make you happy. People with money, they're the happiest people in the world. And he just went on. He's about 70 years old. Just really, and you know my daughter, she just sat there and graciously listened to his babble. But that statement is a very American sentiment. The role of motherhood, it's good, but it is completely secondary to everything else. You should really do something else with your life. Because if you don't do something else with your life and all you are is a mom, well, that's just really not like sufficient. You got to figure something else out. That's not what the scriptures teach about motherhood. There's nothing wrong with a career woman. There's nothing wrong with a career mom. Nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the role of motherhood is undervalued and it is underappreciated. And today I want to talk to you about the bigger picture. The bigger picture. And specifically, I want to challenge you moms today to keep the bigger picture in view. To keep the bigger picture in view. And we're going to keep coming back to that phrase. Keep the bigger picture in view, because that's the key for you as a mom as you raise your children, or if your children are already raised, to Be the mom that God has called you to be. Keep the bigger picture in view. Now, in recent weeks, we've been talking about, or been referencing, King Hezekiah, 2 Chronicles chapter 32, him as a king. Here's the thing about King Hezekiah. When Israel, after King Solomon, the nation of Israel split into into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom was called Israel. The southern kingdom was called Judah. The northern kingdom, by and large, incredibly evil, wicked kings, and they didn't last very long. Judah hung on for a little while longer before they were taken into captivity. And Hezekiah is the most celebrated of all the kings of Judah. He reigned for 29 years, and he was a good and godly king. He wasn't perfect by any means. In fact, one time he got so puffed up with pride that he was on his deathbed, and God graciously worked things out, gave him 15 more years of life. But Hezekiah was the most celebrated of the Judean kings in that southern kingdom. But I don't want to spend our time today talking about King Hezekiah. I want to talk about his mom. And so go with me to 2 Chronicles chapter 29. This is the only place in the scriptures, 2 Kings also mentions her, but this is the only place in the Old Testament where we read about Hezekiah's mom. Verse 1, Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became the king of Judah. How'd you like to have a 25-year-old president? God have mercy, may it never be. Those of us who have been 25, that's not a smack at you who are 25. We know some things. When he became king of Judah, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother was Abijah, also called Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. He did what was pleasing in the sight of the Lord, just as his ancestor David had done. In the very first month of the first year of his reign, Hezekiah reopened the doors of the temple of the Lord, and he repaired them. He summoned the priests and Levites to meet him at the courtyard east of the temple. He said to them, "Listen to me, you Levites. Purify yourselves and purify the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove all of the defiled things from your sanctuary. Our ancestors are unfaithful and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord our God. They abandoned the Lord in his dwelling place. They turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors to the temple's entry room, and they snuffed out the lamps. They stopped burning incense and presenting burnt offerings at the sanctuary of the God of Israel. This is why the Lord's anger has fallen upon Judah and Jerusalem. He's made them an object of dread, horror, and ridicule, as you can see with your own eyes. Because of this, our fathers have been killed in battle, our sons and daughters and wives have been captured. But now I will make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger will turn away from us. My sons, do not neglect your duties any longer. The Lord has chosen you to stand in his presence, to minister to him, and to lead the people in worship and present offerings to him." Now, to provide context for Hezekiah's life, we need to first talk about his dad, Ahaz. You can read about Ahaz in the previous chapters of 2 Chronicles. But Ahaz was one of the most wicked of all the kings that Judah ever saw. And that his son was the most celebrated of all the kings that Judah ever saw. How does a dad like that turn out a son like that? Well, let's contrast Ahaz and Hezekiah. If you go to 2 Kings chapter 16, I'm not going to read it today, but 2 Chronicles chapter 16 tells us about Ahaz, and 2 Kings 16, and then 2 Kings 18 tells us about Hezekiah. What we learn about Ahaz from 2 Kings is that the very first thing it says about him, he did not do what was right in the Lord's sight. I don't think that's how you want to be remembered as a person. Well, what I know about Ken is that he did not do what was right in God's sight. But that's the first thing we learn about Ahaz. 2 Kings also tells us that Ahaz walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. That's the northern kingdom. And the author of 2 Kings had a very disparaging view, a negative view of the kings of Israel. They were wicked, they were evil, and if you were associated with them, that was as bad an association as you could get. Ahaz, took one of his own sons and he burned him alive as a sacrificial offering to a god, some foreign god. Lord only knows. Keep in mind that he died when he was 36. Had to be a day of great rejoicing for the people of Judah when Ahaz died. What I'm saying is, whichever son it was that he burned alive, couldn't have been very old. He sacrificed and burned incense to every other god that was available except the one true God. In fact, he closed the temple. At every turn, Ahaz was spending his time spitting in the face of God. When the Assyrians came and made war against Ahaz when he was king, he made a peace treaty with them by going into the temple that he had closed and grabbing the gold that God's people had given as an offering of worship to the one true God. He took that and he gave it to this pagan king of Assyria as a way to say, please leave us alone. This is Ahaz. This is Hezekiah's daddy. But now contrast that with Hezekiah. First thing we learn about Hezekiah, he did what was right in the Lord's sight. He removed the high places of worship. He reopened the temple. He pointed his people back to God. In the first month of the first year of his reign, 2 Chronicles 29 tells us, first month of the first year, which tells us what? He's been thinking about this. This is the first thing I'm going to do. He gets the spiritual leaders of Judah together and he says, what my dad did was absolutely not okay, and we are going to fix what was broken. We are going to worship the one true God, and you guys are going to lead us in it. Now get things right. Second Kings 18:5 says that of Hezekiah that he trusted the Lord like no other king before him. That's pretty cool. And then the very next verse says that he clung to the Lord. How descriptive. Now, how does a man like that come from a dad like Ahaz? Well, I believe that the link is in the very short phrase at the end of verse 1 in 2 Chronicles 29. His mother was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. Very next statement, he did what was right in the Lord's sight. This woman had spent some time with her son to the point where he was watching his dad do everything that God didn't like, and his mom behind the scenes teaching him, training him, pushing him, so that the writer of 2 Chronicles provides us with the bridge between an absolute about face in the leadership of Judah. From one king to his son, it was obvious Hezekiah didn't learn what he learned from his dad. He learned it from his mom. Would to God that there would be more Abijahs in the world today, who despite everything that's going on, they would look at the bigger picture and they would say, I'm going to raise my kids to be who God created them to be, and that is followers of him. And so I want to give you 4 ways that you can frame the bigger picture in your life each and every day. 4 things. Number 1 is this: prioritize faith in your marriage. Prioritize faith in your marriage. I don't know if it was one of Abijah's sons that Ahaz burned alive, or if he had other wives and it was one of their children. But because she was a queen and in the palace, chances are she watched that. And in the midst of living with a man like Ahaz, she chose faith. She was in a situation that probably no woman that is in this room will ever find herself in. She didn't get to choose Ahaz. In fact, I would say that if there was a lineup, she wouldn't choose Ahaz. Who would? What an idiot. But as a king, you got to pick your bride. You got to pick your queen or queens. Look at Queen Esther, She's chosen by the king, not her choice. So she was put in a situation in an ungodly marriage, and in spite of that, she takes her son, and we read about what he did, and we know that what he did was not associated with what his dad did. Couldn't have been some kind of dream or some major awakening, because the writers of Scripture always wrote about those kind of encounters. His mother prioritized faith in her marriage. Ladies, moms, grandmas, if you are married to a man who is not yet following Jesus, prioritize faith in your marriage. You be a woman of faith. Be a woman of faith. And while your husband may not teach your children about faith in God, you can and you should. Do it. Prioritize faith in your marriage. If you are a follower of Jesus and you are married to a follower of Jesus, prioritize faith in your marriage. My marital advice to everybody who is not married is you need to find somebody who loves Jesus more than they will ever love you. Because if they love God that much, you want to talk about hot to trot in marriage, you want to talk about sexy, you want to talk about God honoring, you want to talk about fulfillment, that's where it's going to start. Or you can try the world's way and, just go after this, that, and the other thing and just try to make it work. Prioritize faith in your marriage. Prioritize faith in your marriage. Secondly, step toward Jesus. There's an old song called Learning to Lean. Learning to lean, learning to lean. I'm learning to lean on Jesus, finding more power than I'd ever dreamed. I'm learning to lean on Jesus. That's what it means to step toward Jesus. You lean on him. And it was obvious that Abijah could not lean on her husband Ahaz. She had to learn to lean on God if she was going to raise her son in the fear and the admonition of God. We're told that she was the daughter of Zechariah. Many scholars believe that Zechariah that's mentioned there is the same one that Isaiah mentions in Isaiah chapter 8. If that's the case, then she was the daughter of a high priest, and she had a great understanding of the ways of God, and she knew what it was to lean on God. Step toward Jesus when you are overwhelmed in your parenting. As a mom, step toward Jesus, because Jesus fully understands your child and you never will. Right? My mom still doesn't fully understand me. I mean to tell you, there are just new things every day. And conversely, there are new things with her. I don't understand my mom. That's the nature of relationship. But we can always step toward Jesus. We can always step toward God. And we see that Abijah did that. If you're a first generation follower of Christ, follow hard after God. Cling to him, as Hezekiah did. Cling to him. Step toward Jesus. What will that do? It will help you frame the big picture. Keep the bigger picture in view as you're raising your kids. Keep the bigger picture in view. Aren't there those times, those seasons? Some of you are raising kids that are, like this, and, they're just little tykes and their head is. Aren't you glad that God straightens out the proportions of us? Because this room would look really funky if we kept the same proportions head to body as babies do. Like, wow, y'all would look really weird. And I'd be up here, we'd all look like Megamind or something. It'd be weird, except we'd be, beige and not blue. But nonetheless, Nonetheless, you've got little kids, and sometimes as a parent, it feels like this stage is never going to end, and it can wear you out, and you can start to get lazy in your parenting and in your discipline. And when you do, you need to step toward Jesus, because Jesus will help you find the strength. He'll help you find the wisdom to, I know you don't want to spank them again, but they need to be spanked. Because what they done was evil. And that is the way that God has chosen to drive foolishness far from him or her. Spare the rod, spoil the child, Proverbs says. Find the currency. For some kids, you can spank them all day long, and they don't give a rat's hind end. But you put them in a corner for a half an hour sitting on their hands, and they'll come back to you and do whatever you say. You just found a currency. But you got to step toward Jesus and his wisdom to learn those things about your kids. Prioritize faith in your marriage. Step toward Jesus. Number 3, frame the big picture by praying big prayers for your kids. Pray big prayers for your kids. I don't know what Abijah's prayers were for her child. We're never told. But you got to believe that she had an understanding that one day her son Hezekiah would sit on the throne. And while she's watching Ahaz, her husband, doing what he's doing, can you see her in the quietness of her own thoughts and mind, maybe even in the same bed with Ahaz, thinking to herself and praying from the depths of her heart, oh God, let my son turn the people back to you. God, redeem this nation. God, let Hezekiah be a man who follows you. That's a big prayer. And you should pray it for your children. Well, my child could never be. You got to pray some big prayers for your kids. You're not afraid to dream big dreams for your kids. Pray big prayers for your kids. Ask God to give you the dreams that he wants to give you for your kids, and begin to invest by planting those seeds in prayer and say, oh God, raise up my son, raise up my daughter. Let them know you in a way like I have never known you. Let passion for you consume them. God, don't let my child just be another employee, just be another leader, just be another Christian. But God, I pray that my child, my daughter, my son would be a history maker and a world changer. Would to God that we as his people would pray big prayers for our kids. Man, what a difference that could make. What a difference that could make. Your child may never be a king or a queen, but they might be. They may never own their own company, but they might. They may just be a janitor, or they might not be. It doesn't matter what they do. It matters who they are. Pray big prayers for your kids. Pray big prayers for your kids. I know that my mom invested time that I'll never know the amount of hours that she invested. Not praying for me, because I was okay, but praying for my brother. Just spend the week with all of them, so I can say that it's great. I love my brother. It is an honor to be his brother. My mom spent countless hours. And I remember, I've told the story so many times, in 4th grade, struggling with math, when my mom and my dad, who didn't understand 4th grade math very well either, just prayed for me. God, would you remove the mental block? Would you remove whatever's standing in the way of his understanding of math? And from that day forward, I never, ever struggled with math the way that I had up till the 4th grade. I excelled in it. That might sound like a small prayer. That was a big prayer, and God answered it. What big prayers do you need to pray for your kids? It'll help you frame the bigger picture. And number 4, don't discount what I call the daily. Don't discount the daily. Abijah is given a fragment of a sentence in all of the scriptures. Hezekiah's mom was Abijah. That's what we're told about her. The son of Zechariah. And I'm sure she could have said, who am I? And who's my son? Our nation is just on its way to captivity. But she didn't. She invested in the daily. And the investment in the daily is what is going to produce the harvest of eternity. Don't you dare take your day-to-day life lightly. Abijah was in the palace with an evil, wicked king who was her husband. But that didn't keep her from being the mom that her little boy needed. It didn't keep her from showing her son what was wrong with what her dad or what his dad was doing wrong. It didn't keep her from that because she didn't discount the daily. And instead, what happened because she invested in the daily and didn't discount it? Her son is still revered as the greatest king of Judah that there ever was. You see, moms, you don't know what your prayers, you don't know what your counsel, you don't know what your investment is going to do in the lives of your kids. But your daily influence makes an incalculable difference in the lives of your kids. Don't you dare sell it short. Because it's incalculable to the positive, and it's also incalculable to the negative. If you're going to ignore parenting, if you're going to think that your role as a mom is something that's second rate, that it's just some burden you have to bear. Motherhood is not. It is an honor. It is a calling. Because God chose you to be your children's mom. How about that? God's smarter than I thought. Huh? Don't discount the daily. Sometimes, as I've said, parenting can be a grind. And many times, your role as a mom is going to be underappreciated. Your parents aren't going to appreciate, or your kids aren't going to appreciate your parenting. When you say no, when you say you got to go. My nephew was with us this last week with my brother and his family, and we were in a situation, a bunch of people, just a little event. It was a big event that we had to be at, graduation, and so he's there at the reception, and all I could see was myself in him. When my parents would take me to a funeral or a wedding or a graduation, and there we are, and I'm like, can we go? And my brother's he just has a beautiful way of dealing with his kids. he was just giving them the business, but what was he doing? He was investing in the daily, knowing that it would be not a good parenting move to send his son out to the car so he could be on a phone or a tablet, but that he would stay with people and that he would stay with family. Simple little thing. But it's the daily. It's the daily. And it makes a difference. And sometimes parenting is a grind. Sometimes you don't feel like fighting the fight. But don't discount the daily. Don't discount the daily. And so let's wrap this up. We look at these things about framing the bigger picture, and I think to myself, man, what mother is there that I could point to? Well, what mom would I set up as the supreme example of framing the bigger picture? And I'm not even going to point to a woman. I'm going to point to our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. And the evidence of his life shows us that along every step of the way, he was looking at the bigger picture. You see, he prioritized his faith in his Father, who was in heaven. He made that a priority. He did it to perfection, so that he is the perfect bridegroom for the bride of Christ, the church. Jesus continually was stepping to the Father, retreating from the crowds, not so he could get a break, so he could be with his Father, stepping towards the Father. And we need to, in the same way, step toward Jesus. Like no mother can, Jesus today is praying for you as a mom, as a grandma, as a dad, as a student, as a child. In fact, Jesus wrote one of his prayers for you down, John chapter 17. We call it the high priestly prayer of Jesus, where Jesus prayed for his disciples, and in that prayer he said, Father, I pray not only for these who are with me, but for all who will come after them. I pray that they would be one with you just as I am one with you. You want to talk about a big prayer? That's the heart of God for you. And today, Jesus, after he ascended into heaven, what is he doing? He is seated at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for you because he loves you, because he cares about you, because he wants God's best for you. That's what Jesus is doing. And we know that Jesus was always looking at the big picture because he never discounted the daily. If he was walking, he would take an alternate route through Samaria to a city called Sychar, where he would meet a woman at a well, a woman who had had 5 husbands and was living with a 6th man who knew better than to get married, because she'd been divorced 5 times. Scum of the earth. Disciples come, they're all put out because he's talking to a woman who's a Samaritan. But Jesus knew something about the daily. People matter to God. And she put her faith in him because he was willing to go out of his way in his daily routine. In his moment of greatest need, and at the moment when Jesus, it all could have fallen apart for us if Jesus had given into the temptation in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus instead, what did he do? He didn't discount the daily. And in fact, we see the evidence of what the daily was. Because in your moment of greatest need, it's going to show us who you really are. Pastor Steve likes to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And when you get punched in the face, that's when we're going to see who you really are. You can talk about your plan all you want. What did Jesus do? Father, I do not want to go to Calvary. And if there's any possible way, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. And thanks be to God that he went to Calvary and that he purchased salvation for you and for me. Thanks be to God that Jesus had your big picture in view when he was in Gethsemane. Moms, let me encourage you today to keep the bigger picture in view. Keep the bigger picture in view. Your kids are not a mistake. Your kids are not a problem. They are not an inconvenience. They are not an annoyance. They are a creation of God that he has specifically given to you to show them the way to him. And so live out that call. Don't lose hope. Don't let frustration and anger and fear and anxiety win the day, but rather, like Abijah, reframe the bigger picture and show your kids the way to life in Jesus. What would it look like for us here at New Life if there was a commitment amongst the moms and the grandmas and the aunts to live like Abijah and to live with the bigger picture in view? Wow. That would shake up all of central Montana. And so let's let God be God. And let's keep the bigger picture in view. Will you stand with me this morning? I want to pray for you moms as we go today. And so there's moms and grandmas all around. And it's pretty full in here today. And so it shouldn't be hard to reach out, put your hand on the shoulder of your wife or your aunt or your grandma or whatever. But let's make sure that every mother in the house today, every grandma in the house today has somebody with their, just we're going to pray for them. And we want to just bless them today. If you see somebody who doesn't have somebody praying with them, if you see a woman standing there, you need to make them a part of your family. Just go over there and just pull them on in, all right? And I'm going to pray for our moms right now. Jesus, I am so thankful today for the influence of mothers. And God, I pray that you would just inspire and breathe fresh hope into the moms and the grandmas and the aunts and the aspiring moms. Just breathe fresh hope, breathe fresh life into them today. I pray, Lord, that there would be encouragement in their soul, that there would be inspiration deep within them that doesn't come from mankind, but Holy Spirit inspiration in their soul to fight the good fight of parenting and being a mom. God, for those today who are weary, for those today who are struggling, for those today who are discouraged, for those moms today who are mourning and who are just saddened in their heart for one reason or another, lift up their heads, I pray, and may they see you, the King of glory, at their right hand. God, I pray that you would walk each and every day with our moms. I pray that you would give them the courage and the boldness to do what is unpopular and to elevate in their heart and in their mind the role that they have as a mom, because it is the most important thing, and we don't know what you could do if we will just get in line with you and let you do through us as parents and as mothers today in the lives of our kids. We just pray, God, for the work of your Spirit in each and every mom that is here. Lord, may our gratitude and our thanks overflow to these ladies, to these women today. God, be honored, be glorified, transform our hearts, make us more like you, and God, let us keep the bigger picture in view. We give you thanks, we give you praise. In your holy name, amen. Amen. Well, happy Mother's Day. God bless you as you go today.